Hello and welcome to the 2014 GFSI Leadership Series, brought to you by SafetyChain Software and Food Safety Tech. My name is Patty Murray, webinar host for Food Safety Tech. We're excited to kick off the last, but certainly not least, segment of our three-part series, BRC, The Road Ahead, with special guest speaker John Kukoly. Food Safety Tech is very proud to be a media sponsor for this important series, for which we've had more than 2,000 participants. We have a lot of very valuable information coming your way today, so we're going to get right to it. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to your moderator for today's webinar, Barbara Levin, Senior Vice President and co-founder of SafetyChain Software. Barbara?
Thank you very much, Patty. We're very, very excited to be here. Just can't thank Food Safety Tech enough for being our media sponsor for this great series. As Patty said, I'm Barbara Levin. I'll be your moderator today. Before we introduce our agenda and our guest speaker, let me give you just a few important housekeeping announcements. One, if you have any technical issues, you can send a question to the host, or if you are not in, you might want to write down this number. If for some reason you're having trouble staying logged in, you can call WebEx technical support directly at 877-509-3239. Again, 877-509-3239. By close of business on Tuesday, SafetyChain will be sending everybody a link to the recording, so you'll be able to share that with your colleagues, and we'll get that out to you in just a few business days. For your privacy, if you are out of full screen, you can see the name of the host and the panelists and your name only. You cannot view the names of the rest of the attendees. We're going to take questions, a few of them throughout the session. We've got some pre-submitted questions that we'll be going through with our speaker. We'll take a couple from the audience, and then we will be, after our pre-submitted questions, we'll open it up for all questions from the audience. We've got a lot of folks. If we get some more questions, we'll stay on a little longer for those of you who will be able to stay past the top of the hour. And so with that, let's look at what we're going to be speaking about this year. This is, as Patty said, the last but certainly not the least of our GFSI series, and today we're going to be focusing on BRC. We're going to be looking at what's new for BRC this year, where it's going in 2015 and beyond, how companies will be impacted by the changes, and why embracing these changes is so important. Excuse me. Got some background noise. If we can have some folks go back on mute. We're going to talk about how you can start preparing for today, for tomorrow's BRC. A lot of people have been asking about how the scheme can help you prepare for FSMA. We're then going to tell you how you can get a little bit more information from BRC, from SafetyChain, and then we're going to open it up to the majority of the questions. As I said, we'll take a couple of them while they're coming in during the questions. If you go to the toolbar at the top of your page, you'll see a red arrow on the right-hand side. If you click on that, you'll get to the question tab. You can enter your questions there. We'll go out of full screen, and you can enter them then there as well at the end of the first part of the presentation. So without any further ado, I am really excited to welcome our special guest today. John Kukoly is the North American leader of BRC. If it has anything to do with BRC in the Americas, I always call John my BRC go-to guy. John, we're so excited to have you here to wrap up our series. Welcome to the GFSI Leadership Series.
Barbara, this is Patty. I think that John was probably that audio that you were hearing, and he has lost his connection, but he's in the process of dialing back in.
Of dialing back in. Okay. Well, with that, then I don't know. I guess I'll just have to wait a moment or two. I wish I had recited a poem. Let me me show everybody. If you go to the top of your screen and you hit return on the left, you can also then see the Q&A tab on the bottom, right? And that's another way to go in and enter your questions. You can see a little arrow right above the top of the slide, a double arrow. You can click that to get right back into your, excuse me, get right back into the slide. And Patty, do we have John back with us now?
I'm just checking. And yes, he is back in. John, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Is the audio okay now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies for having to step out for a moment, but unfortunately my phone died just as you were doing the introductions. I had to scramble to get another one.
You know something, John, it's really good to get all of these webinars, get it out at the beginning, and it wouldn't be a webinar if we didn't have something goofy that we had that happened. I was just getting ready to start to sing, but you got back just in time, so nobody left.
For me, thank you very much. And I apologize to all the people on the webinar for that slight delay. Never like that to happen.
We are good to go. John, anyhow, just welcome. We're so excited for you to join us today. And guess what? We're going to just jump right in. So, you know, there's a lot that's happened. I know a lot of this webinar, we're going to be talking about, you know, where we're going in 2015 and whatnot. But you've been a busy guy this year. What's been happening in 2014 for BRC? What's new now?
Well, actually, it's funny because 2014 has been an extremely busy year for us for a lot of changes we've done. And when we think back on what some of the drivers of the changes are, they're really about we want to strengthen food safety. When you think of what BRC, when we define ourselves as an organization, we're about enhancing food safety. We're not just an audit. We're not just a certification. We want to help grow the respect for food safety around the world. So we've taken that on, and we wanted to strengthen how things operate. One of the ways we've strengthened our program has been our auditor competency exams. So yes, auditors need to know HACCP, they need to know general food safety, audit technique, they need to know the BRC standard as well. But what the industry has been saying to us is auditors really need to have a sound technical grasp of the industry, the technology, the process they're dealing with. So if they're going into a dairy, if they're going into a thermal processing operation, they need to know what all that equipment is, how it operates, and truly where the risks are. People have said we don't want an auditor to come in and read our procedures and just make sure we're following them. We can do that. We need to make sure our procedures are really capturing all the risks. So we introduced auditor competency exams this year. And it's been a challenge. There have been some, you know, there's been a few struggles along the way. We've made some mistakes, but we found some great things. We found some great auditors. What we're finding is that the majority of our auditors are out there really know their technical systems very well, but there were some auditors that had some weaknesses, and identifying those and getting them up to speed has really been important for us. Another area where we say, so that's been sort of the challenge, some of the barrier removals we wanted to do. In the food industry, one of the areas that has been a bit of a problem, certainly when we talked about the horse meat scandal in Europe a year and a half ago, we really saw that things like agents and brokers, distributors, had a very important role to play in the industry, but there were some where they created potentially more of a problem or a blank zone that we're dealing with the distributor, but we don't necessarily know the details of the products we're receiving from them or the mechanisms of transport, the logistics of them getting to us. So we've developed our agents and brokers standard this year, rolled it out, and we're getting a lot of good feedback. So you know what, that really helps satisfy that hole we had in our supplier approval program. Other areas where we've gone back and gone back to 7. So we've taken our food safety standard, issue 6, and we did a lot of work. We did a good 9 months worth of work working with industry, your customers, and really developing what are our best practices, what can we do. We've been growing. We've been expanding not only within the countries like the United States, Canada, Mexico, the UK, Italy, but we've been expanding to new countries. We've been expanding into new areas. So we're seeing our packaging standard for packaging manufacturers grow. We've seen certainly our logistics standard for storage and distribution has been growing significantly. Big change as well is the growth in our unannounced audit. Now that's always a challenge, and that's one that can be a difficult conversation sometimes. But again, our customers came to us and said, we want that option. Don't make us do it. Don't force us. It doesn't have to be, we don't want it to be something that we have to do. But it's something that if we feel we're ready for unannounced, we want to be able to undertake. So we've had our unannounced audit option in for a number of years, and we really rolled it out to something that's more functional and now much more widespread. We've got well over 1,000 sites that are getting audited unannounced, and we've seen a lot of progress and a lot of good things come out of that. We've learned a few things too. It wasn't all simple and straightforward, but certainly 2014's been exciting. There's been a lot of good stuff for us.
Wow, that is a lot. With that question that just came in, John, from William. William is asking, are the audit competency scores available for reference by BRC certified facilities, or does it impact the grade for BRC certification bodies?
Unfortunately, no to the last one, and unfortunately, no to the previous one. And what we wanted to do, this is the first time a scheme, one of the GFSI programs, has really put technical competency exams in place. So we knew there'd be some shocks to the system going in, and what we did is we set the pass mark very high. What you need to know to move forward in this has been pretty significant. So anyone who, and it's been a going forward. So if someone doesn't make a pass or doesn't write the exam, we're not going to look at any of their past activities. It's always moving forward to the next audit. So we did lose a few auditors. There are a few that are no longer doing audits for the BRC program, but that pool is growing back again. We have not made those results, the results of the exams public, other than we know the auditors that are available have obviously passed and done very well. As far as the second part of the question, it's not something that we're going to make public at this point.
Okay. I've got another question for you from, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Gayan. Gayan is asking, do you have plans to expand the scopes such as animal food and feed industry?
Absolutely, yes. That's something that we're kind of working hand in hand with the, again, end of our market, and as GFSI creates benchmarking documents. So right now, GFSI is still undecided about the difference between pet food, and animal feed. Right now, pet food has gone into the human food category, so the standard 6 for food would cover pet food. When you get into animal feed, you're into something different. You're into something nutritional safety. You're looking into a different set of regulations. So yes, BRC will be doing a feed standard. It's probably going to come in a staged approach. We're going to do an addendum to the Food Standard 7 that will cover animal feed, that will start to bring awareness to that area so we don't run in full tilt. And then as GFSI completes and makes available benchmarking, we're going to have a full animal feed standard that will be benchmarked against GFSI. Good question.
Yeah, great. I also, just on a personal note, I find it very interesting and encouraging that there's 1,000 companies that are volunteering to do unannounced audits, which really shows that increased commitment to making sure you're kind of doing everything you can. So let's move on to 2015, which isn't really that far away, and maybe you can start to tell us about where are we going to see BRC go next year and beyond, John?
Well, next year, we thought 2014 was busy and a big year for us. 2015 is going to be a real game changer for us, and on one specific front that I'm going to sort of land on last. First is issue 7 is out for us. So in January, it will be published. We've written the standard. We've made the choice to hold back until January so that we can have all the translations, all the accompanying guidance documents, the best practice guides, the training materials, everything ready to drop on the market at one point. So January 1st, first week of January, you're going to be able to go to the website. Here's the exciting thing. You're going to be able to download the entire standard free. Not just the food standard, all of our standards. So they'll be free for anyone to go to the BRC website and download the standard for free. So you get a full PDF copy of it, which is a big change for us, because typically in the past we had a charge to obtain the standard. So that's one. Now, it's coming out in January. Audits begin July 1st, and that's a hard cutoff. That's something we've had to do. So if you've got an audit in late June, you're going to be issue 6. If you're early July, you're going to be issue 7. That's big. Simply the standard is a nice change for us. It's a nice clean standard. And like many things, we tend to alternate between significant change and then continuous improvement. So when we went from 5 to 6, big change in the standard. Lots of new things, massive undertaking for sites to come up to 6. When we're going from 6 to 7, we've got a handful of changes, but in reality, the majority of it has been a cleanup, make it more sense, and make the standard focus, so it could be a good tool. So things we've added for this version of the standard, food fraud. And that's come from the industry, very, very strong. You need to have something in here to help us deal with food fraud. Now, be clear, the perspective we're taking, the BRC auditor is not showing up at a site looking to find fraud. They're not investigators. They're not forensic auditors. They're not going to try to find it at the site. What they will be doing, very much like the idea of food defense, have you got systems in place to protect yourself from fraud being perpetrated at this site? Have you got, and this is going to be a big focus primarily on suppliers, and specifically those suppliers where fraud may be an issue. So that's going to be a real nice new area to work in, and we think it's going to bring some real changes. And the market's almost demanded it. I mean, we think of the horse meat issue that's come in the past, some of the things with products like olive oil, with specific varieties of rice or other products, fish industry. So it's something that we've heard enough, and we've been asked very, very, very strongly. This needs to be in the standard. Without it, it's not going. It's not as effective as it could be. Another area.
And like you said, it's preventive, right? It's not investigative, it's preventive.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Right.
It's
absolutely.
Not, yeah, so that's a very good point. Sorry, I'm almost making it difficult for you to get a word in. Yeah, I'm so
That's
excited.
okay. No, I'm just, it's all really, really exciting new things. You were talking then about expanded high care.
Yep, and then that was the next, so that's the other area. And we introduced an idea in issue 6 called, and what we did is identified certain products with certain characteristics, and we said, you know what, they need to be prepared in a high care or a high risk zone within the factory. And we said basically if it's a ready to eat product, if it's high protein, if it's refrigerated, if it's susceptible to pathogen growth or pathogen survivability in the product, and you've got a kill step. You really need to make sure you don't reintroduce pathogens. Sounds very simple, but what we've said is you need to almost create this bubble around the exposed cooked product before it gets packaged to really make sure that there is no pathway for pathogens to come back into that zone and possibly recontaminate the product. So that was a huge shift for a few industries. Certainly some industries, fish industry, we had a few struggles with. But the ready-to-eat people really embraced it. They really moved forward with it and thought it was a good idea. What it did is it made BRC, it differentiated BRC. Quite often companies say, well, what's the difference between all these standards? You're all GFSI. Yeah, absolutely. We all meet the basic GFSI requirements. But in something like these ready-to-eat factories, BRC has really stood out as we're more rigorous. We have much more significant control expectations on those industries, and we're seen as, you know, if you are in that ready-to-eat higher risk area, it's the better standard to be at. So it certainly gives you significant more benefits when you're meeting the BRC standard. So what we've done is we've cleaned high care, high risk up. We've added a few things, and we said, you know what, we missed category there. We didn't go into the ambient eye care. So things like shelf-stable, ready-to-eat products that could potentially or are known to have the ability to carry pathogens. You start thinking about things like peanut butter, like chocolate, that we've seen instances of pathogen contamination of these products, but they're shelf-stable. So we're going back to the same area. If you produce those types of products, make sure you understand the potential risks of recontamination. You've really studied that, you understand it in your facility, and you've put controls in place to minimize those risks. So that's an exciting area. And then our big one was, as I said, BRC's role is food safety. Prove it. What we've heard loud and clear around the world, it really doesn't matter which country you're in, that pretty much the #1 or in some countries #2 cause of recalls and withdrawals. What's in the package doesn't match what the package says. So there's some form of mislabeling, usually around allergen control, but for some reason, what's in the package doesn't match it. So if that's the #1 cause of recalls, we said that's going to be our #1 focus in this standard. So packaging control, everything from making sure we have the right recipes, we've done our product development properly, we've done our label development properly, and the whole process control around getting the right product and the right label matched up on the line and 100% containment of making sure that matches so that we don't have these issues was a big focus for this standard. So that's a big one for us, and we expect that to pay dividends. We're definitely focused on driving recalls out in that area. A couple of other areas that we've touched on, we've improved or will be expanding into in 2015, our Global Markets Program. Now, GFSI has a Global Markets Program, and what we've done is we've lined up what we had previously to fit into that GFSI program considerably better. So it's a much closer match. We've essentially split the standard into 3, beginning, intermediate, full certification, if you could think of it that way. And what we're doing is saying, this is for those companies that they're not ready to get certified in the next year. They don't have the maturity, they don't have the expertise, the knowledge, the background in this type of thing, but they want to get there. So it's almost a phased approach, a systematic approach with the availability of a lot more material for them to work their way forward into certification. Because it's one thing to have a standard, to set the bar. It's quite another thing when you're providing as much knowledge and information and material as you can to help those people get there. We'd much rather that companies are able to achieve BRC than it's a standard that is out of reach for people. So our Global Markets Program is going to be very exciting, especially for those areas, as I said, those real small sites, developing areas of the world, developing areas of the industry that need a little more help. And our big one, this one really has me excited. We're just in our final phases of testing for it, and it's called BRC Participate. This is the big game changer. So in past, you've got all of the standards have a website. On the website, you can download documents. You can get a copy of the standards. You can get a copy of interpretation. So you can get bits and pieces that are there. What we've decided is, this day and age, that's that technology, very much the way SafetyChain has done, utilize technology to help companies. We've brought that on board, and we're developing a subscription-based model. The standards will be free. People will be able to log on to this system, not only have copies of the standard, but right at each requirement, as they're reading through the standard on the system, they'll be able to click on that specific requirement. So when it says you have to have management meetings on a certain frequency, you'll be able to click on that. Right attached to it will pop up, here's the explanation, here's the interpretation guide. You'll be able to pop up the next one and say, here is the auditor requirement. This is the auditor guideline for how we do it. Here's best practice. You'll be able to click on a short training video or an e-learning segment. So we've built a system that has just a limitless depth of add-ons we can add. So it's focused on the standard, on each requirement, but then we can pop on additional material to help guide people, to help people move forward and really achieve best in class.
Wow, that's really exciting.
It really is.
Is that available now?
No, it is going to launch in November. So we have just done the final beta testing of it. Everyone's happy. We've given a few people previews of it, and we're going to continue to do that as it rolls out. But yeah, it's going to be it's very exciting for us because it's a different model for delivering knowledge, not just here's a copy of the standard.
Wow, that's really exciting. That is just really exciting. Got a couple of questions from the audience. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more on that as well. Let me see here. We've got a question from excuse me, from Beth. And she's asking, is the storage and distribution scope through GFSI benchmarking yet? If not, is there a target date?
Yes, we're done. And it's good. That's a good question, Beth, because there is a defined process. GFSI, and we work with them in writing these guidance or their guidance documents. So we wrote, this is what a GFSI storage and distribution or logistics standard needs to look like. And that was completed about a year ago. And then they have to get these volunteer teams together that when we apply, we applied for benchmarking, we gave them a copy of our standard, we filled out all kinds of forms, and they have a volunteer team that reviews all of the material we sent in against the guidance requirements from GFSI. And about a month ago now, we got the thumbs up. We are officially benchmarked to GFSI for storage and distribution. And I'll throw, and I will throw a little plug in here, not for BRC, but for GFSI, because it's an organization I really have a lot of admiration for and really like to support. mygfsi.com, just like it sounds, mygfsi.com, is their website. And I recommend you look at the technical working groups because they're always looking for additional people to be part of that. Now, it's quite a rigorous process to get up that far, but certainly if you have expertise that you can help them with, always get in touch. They would love to hear from you.
Excellent. That's really exciting. Okay, so you just announced a lot of changes. You know, change is good, and everybody should embrace change. You know, that's easier said than done. But how are companies going to be impacted by the changes, John, that you've just highlighted, and why is it so important to, you know, kind of rally the troops and the teams and embrace them?
Well, I think management commitment is always important, and we've done a lot of audits around the world. We've got over 17,000 sites that are certified just to the food standard alone. You know, best in class, the people that do it best are the ones that have embraced their projects as an organization. That management has said, this certification or any other project they do is important to us as a company, and we'll all move forward to get there. So it's really about how, as an organization, you take something on. The ones that have always struggled, and I think we've probably all had the opportunity to work in very good companies and companies with a little more challenge. You know, if something like this is, well, that's a QA job, let them take care of it, it becomes far more of a challenge. So simply, and we've done a lot of work trying to figure out how to improve, engage, and then measure the culture of an organization, especially as it surrounds food safety. Now, you can start with training. That's one way, and the commitment to training. Certainly, our main focus is doing our day-to-day job. That's important. But we also need to grow, and we also need to keep up with the industry. So impacted by the changes, we expect sites to pick up on training, to move forward with it, to continually improve and evolve, not just when it comes to BRC, but all things food safety, food quality, regulatory compliance. So what are some of the changes and why is it important to embrace them? What we're driving through the standard and through our messaging and the information we're bringing forward is we need to move the area where we're reducing the risks out from ourselves. So most facilities have pretty good control within their doors. we need to move a step outside the door and have the controls there. So supplier approvals, supplier control, supplier management, knowing your suppliers, big part of it. And that's a big change that we're looking for with issue 7, very more enhanced supplier approval, supplier controls, supplier knowledge, transfer of information between the site and its suppliers so that they understand the risks, changes to risks. Feeds into a lot of those recall issues, a lot of those change management issues. So taking the idea that we have our house in order, but we need to push sort of the defenses out one layer further to make sure that we're only allowing into our facility the best things that are under control. That's significant increase. So from a issue 7, what do we expect in the way of change? Supplier controls. Absolutely, that's a big one. We do also have to have the internal house in order. So we need to have our internal controls. And you know, I've been in the industry for a lot of years, and I would say everyone's number one, the best tool you have when it comes to food safety or regulatory compliance or just consistency, quality, internal audits. Understanding how to do them very well and utilizing them to their full advantage. So again, we're expecting, how are you going to change? You get your supply chain, tighter control, better oversight of them, but also make sure that you are growing your internal controls to the best you can, that they're really protecting what we do, process controls, verification, revisiting validations, reviewing our programs. That's where we should be spending our time, especially on the QA and on the management front, that we've got it set up. It should run day to day on an even keel, but we should be able to go in there and challenge, ask the what ifs. How would we respond if? Really promote the growth, and we can handle more than the day-to-day, where we take the unexpected and make it a planned for event. So the expanded risk assessments as well. Risk assessment, fabulous tool. You know, I think people understand food safety well in the industry, but where I know for myself in a number of places I've worked in the past, we haven't necessarily filled the toolbox as well as we can. So I talked about, you know, we could move the risk outside of our organizations. We can really take on internal audits, so we've got those challenges to our systems to make sure they're robust. Tools like risk assessment, root cause analysis, those are fabulous tools, and they're not restricted to food safety. I don't care if it's occupational health and safety, if it's maintenance downtime, production, first line pass, or it's food safety or doing well on your certification audit. Knowing how to do a good risk assessment, and there's not one tool, there's not one form that works. You have to have a number of different ideas, but the concept of doing a risk assessment is very important. Same thing with root cause analysis. Things happen. You'll never be in a position to say it's perfect all the time, but being able to learn from those challenges, those issues that come out, having root cause analysis as a great tool in the toolbox to bring out and say, this is when we're going to apply it, and we're going to get the most out of the little problem we had, hugely important. And enhanced food safety. The bar should be raised. We should never be in a position where we're sitting back and saying it's safe. We're good enough. We don't need to do any more. We need to move forward in food safety. Certainly, regulation is moving ahead. Certainly, detection levels are moving ahead. Certainly, expectations of our customers and consumers are moving ahead. So we can never sit back and say we're there. Always continuous improvement, move forward, and also move forward to not only we're in this, but bring our partners involved, whether it be our ingredient suppliers, packaging suppliers, logistics, service. Bring our partners, make sure they know their role in our products being safe. What do we need them to do, and how do we expect them to do it? So what we're seeing, and going back to the GFSI conversation, it's really about not just us. We're certified, that's great. We've got a whole supply chain that we need to make. And potentially the certification could be one method for them to help.
Really, really well said, John. It's a lot to think about. You know, what are some things? You know, you've got the top 3 things that companies can start to do today to prepare for this BRC in the not-so-distant future that you've been sharing this vision with us?
I'd love to. And this list is for those, if you're looking at the presentation, this is a short list. Doesn't mean it's easy. I think, and certainly each one has its own challenges, but I really want to expand on these because I thought they were the areas. As an organization, we need to commit to food safety. We need to say it's important, and we need to make sure that we give that idea and we give that, promote that every chance we get. So the organization needs to say, we're going to use this certification. I'm going to talk in a BRC or a GFSI mode for a second. We're going to use this certification process, this tool, to enhance our food safety. So if for those organizations who think we need to get certified, that's the goal, you need to shift what the goal is. Certification is the end result. If you think of getting an education, the diploma is absolutely important, or that degree is absolutely important, but it's really only a measure of completion. What's truly important is everything you did in those 3 or 4 years leading up to that. All of the learning, all the knowledge, all the improvements, all the capability you gained. That's the important part. The diploma or degree is the final measure. Certification really has to be looked at from that perspective. So it's not that we're not committed to getting our certification. It's important. Certainly your customers will tell you it's important. Your sales department will tell you it's important. But get all of the good things that it brings to the table as well. The second idea I'd put forward, and this is an employee level, this is an individual level, and this is also a management looking at our employee level, that it's not what are this quarter's or what are this year's objectives that are the only important measures. We should each individually have our own professional development plan. Managers should be looking at their staff and saying, you know what, these people are the future of food industry, and certainly they're key players in my success and in me maintaining the safety of our product and within our organization. I should be working with them to develop their plan, because in 10 years, if they only know what they know now, they're not going to be very valuable. As an individual, in 10 years, a lot of us probably don't want to be doing the same thing we're doing, so we need to understand how are we going to grow. So I would, and this is something really off topic from certification, but I think it's really important and sometimes overlooked in getting so busy in our day-to-day jobs. Where do we want to be in 10 years, and how are we going to get there? So what do I need to do this year? What do I need to do next year, the next 3 years? A lot of that involves training. A lot of that involves getting into new areas, trying new things, professional development. It doesn't happen by accident. As individuals, we can't assume our company will do it for us, or we can't assume necessarily they will keep us up to the level we wish to be. So on a personal level, professional development, where do I want to be? How am I going to get there? What credentials do I need? Credentials are becoming consistently more important in the industry. So what do I need behind me? And then the last one, what can you start? You need to look at culture. Organizational culture, certainly it's something that's a hot topic within GFSI. It's a hot topic for regulators. What is the culture of this organization, and does it support food safety? So goes back to the first one, helps support the second one. But as an organization, we all need, but specifically the senior management, really need to define the culture. Culture is not defined by putting a mission statement on the wall. That's part of it, but that doesn't do it. Do we live it? Do we breathe it? Do we talk it? Do our actions speak to our culture? That's how it's developed. We've all, again, most of us have had the opportunity to work for different organizations. We've been in organizations with really fabulous culture, where it was an open, learning, a challenging environment where you enjoyed it and you felt good about your role. We've also been in areas where the culture hasn't been that supportive. And we know it's reflected in the products, in the output of the facility. So although it is an investment in time and energy to make sure you've got the right culture, one that works for your operation, you need to have that in place for your products, for your production, for your customers. That's kind of this one I wanted to go a little bit off topic and a little bit differently, but I think it's really important because we need to keep our eye on a bigger picture sometimes as well.
On bigger picture, always down the road, absolutely. Now, I'm looking at the questions from the audience, and we're going to get to this question. I'll give you some information and get to them. And I am already seeing a lot of questions on this topic. We've spoken about it. Let's get to this, and then we will get to everybody else's questions in just a few minutes. We will stay on past the top of the hour. You know, it's the top on everybody's mind right now, John, right? FSMA. At the high level here, and then we'll get to a lot of individual questions I'm seeing pouring in on FSMA now. How can BRC help companies prepare for FSMA? And probably do 3 webinars on that topic alone. But you know, at 300-foot level, what are your thoughts on this?
I tell you, it's been an interesting journey, because I think it's been, oh, good grief, 3 years now we've been quite heavily involved. It's been the #1 conversation for everyone. And believe it or not, there's also a similar set of regulations called the Safe Food for Canadians Act. So FSMA is certainly led the way, and it started the ball rolling, but I think we're going to see a lot of other countries go the same direction in updating their regulations around food safety. You know, and we've, as I say, it's been a journey from the initial discussions we've had, and we've been quite involved with folks from the FDA and other organizations on this topic, where the intent was, what we need to do, how we need to get there, how we're going to fund it. This big, massive set of regulations that's continually changing piece by piece, trying to keep a handle on it. In our conference we had this spring in San Antonio, we had the FDA come and speak about it. And it was an interesting change in tone, because they typically have given, you know, more ethereal outlines, fuzzy, this is kind of the direction we're going, pull out the timelines. They came with a very different message this time. They said it's now. Discussion's over. We're not moving. We're not there. In the next year, you need to be ready you need to meet the expectations around FSMA, whether they are firmly written in law or still being manipulated to a certain extent, but the time is now to get working on it. If you wait another year to implement the expectations around FSMA, you're going to be behind the ball. The other message they said was, and we've had a lot of discussions how BRC, how the other standards, GFSI in general, meets the expectations. They're very happy. And again, a lot of their position is FSMA is actually pretty easy. The expectations are pretty straightforward for an individual organization. Certification, and you know, they're never going to say we'll accept GFSI in lieu of anything else, but they've recognized that a GFSI certification puts a lot of the majority of the pieces in place for you. So when it comes to FSMA, basically the message is, if you've got 3 things in order, you're good for the next few years. You're going to have to keep on top. You're going to have to keep continually improving. But you've really only got to have 3 things in order. I'm going to go in reverse order here because it's easier for me. You need to have, they've used the term qualified individual in charge of food safety. And that's it. They have not defined it. They have said qualified individual could be a group of people, a team. You don't have to have it all on one person. But what you do need to do, each site, each organization needs to be able to say, we have a qualified, competent individual or team that understands our process and food safety and how they relate. How are you going to prove that is the question. So you think, let's go back to that last slide mentally for a second and say, wait a minute, my 10-year professional plan, developing my resources, my people that are under me, it would be very beneficial for me to say, well, yes, here are my 3 deputies. They've all got HACCP certificates. They've all got food safety systems training. They've got this background. They've got competency in that technology or in our category of production. So build that case for your qualified individual or qualified team. Make sure you can stand up and say, yes, we can justify the fact that we have, based on these credentials, these backgrounds, this experience, we have met the expectation of qualified individual. If you've got nothing, you're in trouble. If you've got a good argument, you're going to be fine for a while. The other one, very clear, thou shalt have traceability. There's been no question whatsoever with this. You will understand where all of your ingredients came from and have traceability one step up. Now, they have said ingredients. They have not said packaging, so I think we're safer on that. BRC did include packaging in issue 7 under traceability. Certain part or relevant packaging is the way we've stated it. But you have to have a good traceability system and one that works. Doesn't matter if it's paper. It doesn't matter if you've gone to a nice electronic system that makes your life easier. But you need to be able to trace, I made this finished good, I made 100 cases of it, I know exactly where every 100 cases went, or I got in 100 pounds of this raw material, I know exactly where it came from, and I know where every one of those 100 pounds went into which finished goods. So having that kind of traceability, and remember, it's looking both directions. Where did my finished products go, and where did my raw material come from, and where did they end up, finished goods? So make sure you've got that whole expansive idea when you talk about traceability. And I left the last one, supplier verification, not because it's harder, but because it's more complex. And there are two things to think about here. Essentially, the laws that are being put in place state you need to have verified proof that your supply chain has a food safety system and traceability. So you need to have something in place for each of your suppliers. Does not matter if it's domestic or offshore. For each supplier, you need to be able to prove that you know they have a good food safety program and that they have a traceability system. That could be onerous. Certainly if you have nothing on your suppliers, it's going to be a bit of a stretch. I personally am not convinced that a simple questionnaire, do you have a traceability system, will be sufficient proof. I think you're going to have something more. Certainly, the FDA has embraced the use of accredited third-party audits. You could probably, they will not put the word GFSI, but something like a GFSI certification for a supplier would certainly cover off, A, they have a food safety system, and B, they have a traceability system, and there's a recognized process to verify that called certification audit. So that's a big one. The interesting point forward in supplier verification was you may have all your ducks in a row, but if your suppliers are not, if you don't have that proof on your suppliers, they may disappear on you in the near future. So you're going to, this is the part that you need to be working on now to make sure you're going to preserve your supply chain into the next couple of years.
Wow, very, very well said. And those are the three big ones, John. A lot of good information there. What we're going to do now, because we've got a lot of questions, which is really exciting, I'm going to give everybody just a little bit of information on how you can get in touch and get more information from BRC, a little bit about how SafetyChain can help you manage a robust program. This is going to be really just a minute or two. While we're doing that, you see I've taken us out of full screen. So everybody now should see the Q&A tab on the bottom. Enter your questions there, and then we will just start to bring them out. John has graciously agreed to stay on a little later if we need to do that. So first, for more information on BRC, you see we've got John's email there. We'll also have this in a follow-up email to you when we send you out slides on Tuesday. You see the BRC website. All of the information, training about events is all available there. And so that is a fabulous resource for everybody there. SafetyChain can help you manage a robust GFSI program. We help manage all of your food safety and quality assurance programs. In this area, we can help you automate document and record management. We can automatically manage required tasks and corrective and preventive actions for you. Centralize a repository of food safety and quality data for trending and continuous improvement and audit readiness at the click of a mouse. We've got capabilities to help you manage an approved vendor program. John was just talking about making sure that you've got your supplier ducks in a row. Pretty comprehensive solution. You can go to our website at safetychain.com to learn more. We also sent all of the registrants for this series, excuse me, a white paper on how we help automate a GFSI program for you. You should have all received that. If you didn't, let us know at info@safetychain.com. We'll make sure we get it to you. It was an e-paper, so you got a link to it. We're working with SCS Global. They are a BRC certification body and auditors for quite a few schemes. November 7th, Ask the Auditor. You'll be able to come to that webinar and ask the auditor anything you want to. We're going to talk about what are the top non-conformances, what are the top 5 best practices for successful audits. You can register for that on our website. John, I think probably, you know, in this 1 hour, John has a wealth of additional knowledge. He will be one of the speakers at Food Safety Tech's upcoming Food Safety Consortium. You can come and meet John. SafetyChain customer Atkins will be presenting a case study. There are really dozens and dozens of industry leaders conducting workshops, giving presentations. There's a lot of training sessions. This is really a premier event in the food safety industry. SafetyChain is a really proud sponsor of it. And if you registered for this webinar, which you're on the phone, so you must have, you automatically can get a 10% discount on registration. Just put the code webinar in there. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But what we're going to do now is get to all of these questions. John, I hope you have a glass of water because we've got a lot of them for you.
All set.
All set. I'm going to leave this slide up there so people can see that information and write down the code if they need to. So I'm just going to go here. Trying to see the ones that we didn't do already. Okay, from Myron. John, as FSMA comes closer to reality, I'm seeing more consultants talk about verification via electronic methods or storage on a cloud-type system. How do you coach BRC auditors to handle electronic documentation?
That's an interesting one. So when we talk about electronic records and documentation, auditors have to be able to audit the systems. So, I mean, the easy part are records from within the facility, so production records. Instead of you going to a filing cabinet and pulling last March 15th check on the metal detector, you have that electronic. That's fine and easily retrieved. When you start looking at connected records, you have to, as an auditor as well, understand that sometimes there may be a delay in getting them. You have to be able to assess, is that delay going to have an impact on food safety? Certainly the retrievability of the records, just because they're in the cloud, because they're on a server, because they're paper, there should be no difference in the retrievability in the organization or of the manageability of the validity, the validity of the document. So one of the additional questions an auditor will ask, just like in the old days we'd say, no, records have to be in pen, they can't be in pencil. One of the questions the auditor is going to ask, when you upload this document, what are the security systems in place to prevent unauthorized changes to this document? Because an electronic system or an electronic document, I have no idea on first look whether or not this is the original, this is an altered version, this is just a copied version. So I'm going to ask as an auditor a little bit more about how the authenticity of that record is maintained, about the security of the database. And certainly we're going to have to look, if you've got paper records, they're housed in an office, a question could be, well, is there any backup for critical documentation? The same question is going to come for electronics. So good, excellent point. Auditors, we have recognized that we need to update their mechanisms, their methodologies to take on electronic systems and to be able to audit through them so that it simply becomes another method rather than a barrier to being able to perform the audit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. I'll give a little plug for Technology Mine as well as I know some others that if you're, technology is a great way to have everything at hand, make sure that you use a technology that provides unalterable time and date stamps, right? Because more and more do these days. Christina wants to know, John, will BRC address the FSMA rule for transportation of perishable and high-risk foods?
Yes, yes. So it's typically it's going to be buried in either supplier verification, so that when we're coming forward as that's coming into our supply chain, the question needs to be asked as part of your internal control program, how are we monitoring, managing the logistics end of this, whether it be a distribution center or the transportation section. And yes, we are revisiting again our storage and distribution document to make sure as changes come in through FSMA that we're keeping up to date with all the expectations. So as it stands right now, yes, we meet the expectations. And will we in future? Yeah, that's our intention. So that's a really good question specific to that industry.
Yeah. Demetrius is asking, you know, we spoke about voluntary unannounced audits. Demetrius is asking, are companies eventually going to be pushed into having unannounced audits to maintain certification in the future? Where do you think that's going to go? Where's your crystal ball? Come on.
Reiterate BRC's position right now, and that is our unannounced audit. We believe it has a place, certainly in the maturity curve of an organization of their food safety program. Unannounced audits certainly have a place. We will maintain it as an optional fixture, an optional feature. That being said, if one of your customers says, we don't care if the standard says it's optional or not, you have to have your audit unannounced, it will come to you. So it would not surprise me to see some retailers, and we've been in discussion with some in North America that certainly are looking in that direction or looking to have that capability. Unannounced audits, they're scary. Coming into them, they are real scary things. And it is a different audit. Certainly, it's a different animal, and it's not what you want for your first audit. But if you think back to that slide about culture, organization, if your senior management team is at a point where they think, you know what, I don't have to be here when the auditor's here. I have developed a food safety culture and a food safety-based organization and a team here that I don't need to be here. My quality manager doesn't need to be here. They can manage through the audit. Now, an auditor on unannounced realizes that if you've got the second shift supervisor is it for guiding you through the audit, they may not know all of the details of your validation studies for your cook staff, or they may not know where the calibration sheet certificate is for your indicating your one core thermometer. We're not going to get hung up on that. What we are going to get hung up on is we're here for the unannounced audit. Within 30 minutes, we're on the floor, we're watching what's being done, and we're interviewing employees. And that's really the strength. It's not surprise we're here, we want to see if it's clean. Facilities that have entered into BRC on a day-to-day basis, they've got that down pat. What you really want to make sure of and have the confidence in your organization of is that my employees all know their role, their responsibility when it comes to the protection of the integrity of our products, and I don't need to be here to answer for them. So unannounced, it's a scary thing. It's not as bad once you get there as you think, and it is a fabulous second year in. The change in your culture is truly fabulous.
So, Jen, Laura would like to know if the storage and distribution standard is going to have a new issue.
Eventually, not for the next 2 years. That's simply our plan. Food 7 rolls out next year. Late next year, early 2018, 5 rolls out. We also have to take a look at our consumer products standard. We have to get our feed standard, our retail standard out. 6 works right now, so we're quite happy with it. We're not seeing a change for at least a couple of years.
Right. Interesting. Let's see. We're at the top of the hour. if you are leaving us to run off to your next meeting, not you, John, you have to stay, but everybody else, thank you so much. I know a lot of you have been to all of the events in this series. On behalf of Food Safety Tech and SafetyChain, we thank you very much for your time. You'll be getting, as we said, the slides by Tuesday, the link to the recording. It'll have John's contact info there for you. And for those of you that have a couple of extra minutes, we're going to stay on a little longer and get to some of these additional questions. So back to you, John. Jeremy has a question. How do you see the new high care requirements affecting the cheese conversion industry?
Oh boy, Jeremy, if you could maybe send a quick update on what you mean by cheese conversion. I'm going to take an assumption. I'm thinking you're talking not the product. Well, there are two sides to that this may be. One is we get milk, we send out cheese. The other is we get in blocks of cheese, we send out packages of cheese. I'm going to go with the second one, that we're sending out packages of cheese. New requirements won't significantly impact. They would be considered high risk for most types of cheeses, and what we've done is split cheese types into some are in high risk, some are in high care, things like cheddar, mozzarella, the standard certain pH, certain water activity cheeses are going to be high care. So all we're looking for is if you're a cut and wrap operation, you treat your open product area like a high care area. If some of the soft cheeses may move into high risk area considerations, but the expectation is you're going to treat it like a contaminable product that's open to contamination. We're not going to let any pathogens in the room where we've exposed that product.
Great. A question from Kate, and I believe that she is referring to the BRC Participate. Is there going to be a subscription cost to be able to drill down and get the info on all of the clauses?
Of course. As much as I think all of you that have been involved in IT projects realize these things are expensive. We are essentially trying to build a model out where we do some cost recovery of the system. So there will be a cost. It will be approximately $160 per year per license. Sounds like a bit, but boy, when you think of it compared to one training program and with the training that will be embedded, the e-learning that will be embedded, it's a real good investment. About the one copy of the standard previously.
There you go. Absolutely. Christina is asking, does BRC plan to address the FSMA rule for transportation of perishable and high-risk foods?
Oh, we had that question already. Yes.
Did we? You know what? I thought it sounded familiar, but it wasn't marked answer. But maybe two people probably maybe have asked the same one. Let's see. Sandro, I hear that issue 5 for packaging is being prepared. Is there a date for implementation, and what changes can we expect?
Perfect question. Yes, issue 5 is being prepared. We're at the point where we're drafting it. Certainly, if you have strong views, send me an email, Sandro, because we are looking to put a group together to review it to make sure that we're meeting the market's demands. Should be written by mid-2015, released early 2016. As far as changes go, we're going to put a lot of effort, and we're working on it now, around understanding of migration studies. It's been a real bear for everybody. Everybody knows the word. Not a lot of the industry, either on the packaging side or on the food manufacturing side, necessarily understands what that means and where it's actually applicable, because every piece of packaging for every product does not need a migration study, but there are sometimes certainly when that data is necessary to protect the integrity of the product. So that's an area where we're going to put a big focus on the standard, and it's not forcing migration studies, it's understanding the science around them and the need for them, and we're going to do some training courses on that as well. So that's an exciting part. Sandro, more information on it. We are developing the draft for comment will probably go out in a couple of months for public comment. So if you're getting our newsletter from our website, you're going to get an email saying, hey, the draft is available, please comment.
Great. I love this question, and it's come up at every one of the events in the Leadership Series. I know you addressed earlier some of the differentiators, but Gideon is asking, you know, kind of at the high level, what are the key differences, what are the key differentiators of BRC to other GFSI schemes?
I've never heard that question before. And I'll give the warning here. I may have a biased opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. You have to look at this like buying a car. What I like in a car, what you like, Barbara, in a car, what somebody else likes in a car, two different things, or all different things. What I like the way it feels, I like the way it looks. Like certain unique aspects of it that aren't in the core definition of a car. So with, you know, there are all kinds of things that fit the definition of car, but there are a lot of variations on it. So a very biased opinion point of view. BRC has one version. It includes food safety and food quality, as well as expectations around food defense, food fraud, and regulatory compliance. SQF primarily has level 2 and level 3, where they've said level 2 is only food safety, level 3 incorporates food quality as well, and food defense in both of them. FSSC is the other big one, and that is only food safety, nothing to do with quality. If you want quality, you go get ISO 9001. Level of prescription is probably the biggest. FSSC is very what they call risk-based. Thou shalt have a program in pest control. Not a lot of expectation. BRC puts a reasonable amount of prescription into it. So we're going to say you have to have a pest control program, but it also has to have all of these parts. We don't go so far as to tell you how far apart your bait stations are, how many traps you need to have, what color things are, but we do have enough prescription that in what people generally say when they read BRC is, boy, that's tough, but I understand what it's asking me. Whereas the other standards, quite often, there are sections of it where people will say, I'm not quite sure what this is asking for, what it's looking at, what it's talking about. So the clarity of the BRC is certainly, from the feedback I've gotten, it's a very clear and well understood standard. From a rigor standpoint, certainly in the high-risk industries, BRC is, you know, it's the one. If you want to be best in class, you get BRC. If you can't handle that, you're going to have to look to one of the other standards. So level of expectation is a little bit different. Beyond that, differences, databases, the way your information is displayed or available to your customers, there are some differences. Something like Participate throws a huge curve into the equation. And the unannounced audit program. You know, FSSC does not have one. We have a voluntary one. SQF has a mandatory one. So, and theirs is every 3 years. So there are differences. Best recommendation I can make, do not get 3 standards and read them and try to figure it out. You'll drive yourself insane. All 3 of us have directories of certified sites. So you can go on brcdirectory.com. You can go on SQFI.com. You can go on the FSSC website. You can say, search for somebody. I'm a bakery. Search for another bakery that's certified to the standard in my country. And they're going to list them. Call them and ask them, hey, you got this certification. How was it? Was it valuable? Was it worth the time and energy and investment? Would you choose it again? That's probably the most powerful, and that's probably going to be the least biased as well. So that's always been my recommendation. Find somebody who's already gone down that path and ask them all about it. They're going to be the best people who've gone through it.
Really, really good advice, John. That's great. Going to take a couple of more questions. How you doing? You have time for a few more? Because I think we could finish them off.
It's Friday afternoon. We got the rest of the day.
Okie doke. There you go. Let's see. Will the new version of BRC contain clauses for commercially motivated food adulteration?
Yes. And honestly, that's the difference. That's kind of the difference between food fraud or adulteration and food defense. Food defense is I'm playing with your product to hurt someone. Food fraud is I'm playing with your product or ingredients for an economic advantage. So whether it, and then you get some of the tampering things which tend to go more into food defense. Food fraud is really about, I cut this 100% cold pressed virgin olive oil with not virgin olive oil, but I'm not telling you that. Or I'm substituting this fish species with a less expensive one. Or, I got some really cheap horse meat. I'm going to change the label and make it say beef. Yeah, so food fraud, in our perspective, is all about economically motivated substitution, or primarily about that. So, bang on. And we've done it. I will give us credit. We've done it extremely well. Basically, we've said there are 3 statements or 3 expectations when it comes to food fraud. Number 1, know what you're talking about. So, have a source of information on what fraud is reasonably likely to occur. I always point people to things like foodfraud.org or that type of place. But anyways, it might be your trade association, it might be a larger corporate entity. Understand what the risk is. Number 2, do a risk assessment. Ingredient by ingredient, say, is this at risk? General hard winter wheat flour, is that at risk of fraud? Probably. I'm pretty comfortable in saying no. Organic olive oil, or organic maple syrup, I'm thinking there's a pretty decent risk. So do a risk assessment. Identify which ones you really need to worry about. The average facility, spices are probably to a certain extent going to be in there, but may only have 1 or 2 products that they're really worried about, or there's been a history or a known risk of fraud. 3rd step, so you know what fraud is. Then your risk assessment, you know what your risks are. 3rd step is put something in place to mitigate it. Whether it's a control, whether it's supplier approval programs or supplier restrictions, whether it's testing or random testing, put something in place to control it. So, yep, it's there.
Great, thank you. I apologize for that. I was trying to get your email back up there again, and it went up about 10 slides. I think this might be the last question.
Excellent. There were a couple of comments about November. I think they're talking about the Participate this November, so within a month we expect Participate to be up and running.
Yep, I see that, and then the last one I think I see here is, do you see BRC reaching any mutual understanding with government regulators with respect to recognizing BRC, such as, FDA with FSMA, or the Safe Food for Canadians Act, or is that will those always be sort of recognized but separate?
I think there will always be a certain amount of recognition but separate, but we have had discussions with FDA, with CFIA, with the Food Safety Authority in the UK and in the Netherlands on what we're calling earned recognition. And that basically the idea is by getting BRC certification, you're seen as than not having. So different levels of progress. In the Netherlands, if you have a BRC certificate, you will not see a government regulator come into your facility. That was a fabulous one. We did a lot of work on that. The others, the discussions are far more preliminary, probably a little bit more advanced in the UK. Obviously, that's our home base. But the discussions we're having primarily with the FDA and CFIA are around risk-based rates of regulatory visits. So they are very firmly understanding that if there are 2 fairly identical facilities, one has a BRC certificate, one does not, they know where they're going to spend their time. So frequency based on risk, and the risk measure, one component of it being certification to an accredited scheme like this, is certainly something we've discussed, and I would not be surprised to see in the future. Certainly they've recognized it as part of the supplier verification model for both foreign supplier and domestic supplier verification models. And we are in discussions. I mean, it's a tough one, and they understand as well as we do discussion about how much information sharing could there be. So we could certainly say yes certified or no certified. Certainly from border crossing, will a company that's trying to send their product into the U.S. If they have a certificate, is that something that's going to add weight today? No. In the future, most likely, as far as the expediency of crossing the border. So, yeah, we're having those discussions. As you would probably imagine, discussions like that don't go at a very rapid pace, but they're really good. I mean, I'll give all the regulatory organizations we're dealing with credit that they're very open-minded. They see the benefits. They see where this can help. They also understand their limitations from the public eye of turning over something that's always seen as a government duty to essentially the private sector. So they know where the lines are drawn as far as how far they can go. But, yeah, we're having a lot of discussions with government organizations, specifically FDA and CFIA.
Great. Well, I think that was a wrap. If for any reason we did not get to one of your questions, said John's email will be in the follow-up email. You can direct it to him or send it to info@SafetyChain. We'll make sure John gets it. Thank you very, very much, John. This was really terrific. Patty and the whole gang at Food Safety Tech, thank you. And to our audience, have a fabulous weekend. Thank you so much for your participation. And, you know, I'm sorry, but we're headquartered in San Francisco, so I just have to say go Giants. And I had to get it in there. Sorry for all of you who are calling in from Kansas, but everybody have a fabulous weekend. And again, thanks, John.
Thank you.